Good afternoon, everyone. This is Reading for Charity again. This is like take 3 on this one because I keep messing it up. Today, this time around, Catch 22 by Joseph Heller. This was a little bit of a slog in places. It's good and bad. The book I would compare this to is Captain Corelli's Mandolin, which I read and reviewed much earlier in this block. And I really should have read these ones back to back. Really, I think that would have been the better way of doing them because Captain Corelli's Mandolin is now slightly fuzzy in my head. And they both explore, similar things. So the middle of the Second World War, both set in in islands, both full of people who are just trying to get through the war without, dying, essentially. The differences between the two of them is that Captain Corelli's Mandolin is much more traditionally structured with, very, very few viewpoints of the characters and, a very strong narrative running through. Things happen in A to Z, start of time to end of time. In Catch 22, the chronological order of the book is all over the point, and there's multiple fractured viewpoints. So it can occasionally be a little bit tough, especially if you're reading the book and you're a little bit sleepy or a little bit tired. Say you've just read 97 other books and you're trying to get through it. It can be a little bit occasionally hard to understand what's going on. I had to go back a few times and reread chapters because I realised, or reread sections, because I realised that I'd read it thinking that the character who was espousing the viewpoint was somebody else. So I had to go back and reread it and go, right, okay, suddenly this all makes a lot more sense. And there was a few times I had to put down the book and actually go away and say, that's enough for tonight. I actually can't get this book. I have to come back tomorrow and do this. So I found it slightly frustrating from that viewpoint. It didn't make it an easy read. The other issue that I had with it in terms of in terms of getting it read was it's again a little bit quite flowery, hard, staccato language, which seems to be quite an American thing. A lot of the American novels have this kind of punchy sentences that don't necessarily all link together. So I've got a good example. Of here, and it is this when they're talking about Catch 22. So the name of the novel and how he explains it. But there was only one catch, and that was Catch 22, which specified that concern for one's safety in the face of dangers that were real and immediate was the process of a rational mind, or was crazy and could be grounded. All he had to do was ask, and as soon as he did, he would no longer be crazy and would have to fly more missions. Or would be crazy to fly more missions and sane if he didn't, but if he were sane, he had to fly them. If he flew them, he was crazy and didn't have to, but if he didn't want to be sane and had to, Yossarian was moved very deeply by the absolute simplicity of this clause of Catch 22 and let out a respectful whistle. Absolute simplicity. Yes. Okay, so the way that's written, it's written really hard to understand, but you can break it down, and essentially it boils down to you'd have to be crazy to fly a combat mission because people are trying to kill you. But craziness is a reason to be grounded. So, to be crazy, you have to be crazy to fly, but crazy means you can't fly. So everyone who flies has to be sane, but you can't be sane to fly because you'd have to be crazy to fly. It is a very, very good definition of Catch 22. But the way it's written in the book, I had to read it like 6 times to actually work out what he was trying to say. So, and the whole book is along similar lines like that. There's jokes started in one chapter, and then 6 chapters later, somebody else finishes the joke, and you're like, wait a minute, what was the intro to that joke again? And you're flicking back through the book trying to find it. So, I find the book frustrating to read, compared to something like Captain Corelli Mandolin. I think it's one I'm going to have to go back and read again because I was starting to struggle for time to get this one finished, and it's a decent wodgy book. It's 500 plus pages. Yeah, it's 500 pages. So I think I'm going to have to go back and read it again. it's supposed to be down as being satirical. I don't know. I don't know how much satire I would add in there. There's, it's. It didn't feel overly satirical to me. But the whole idea of a whole bunch of soldiers who don't want to fight wars, that's something that's been done to death, absolutely done to death. But again, this was written back in the 50s, I think it was written. I've got it in front of me rather than looking it up. Yeah, it was written in 1953. So, the idea of soldiers not wanting to fight has been done to death even before that. 16th, 17th, 18th century, there's stories, humorous stories about soldiers who don't want to fight. So I'm not sure if I would call it satire or absurdist or anything. But that might just be because I had so much of a struggle actually getting this read. So should you read the book? Should you read this book? I'm going to say yes, and I think I should reread this book. I don't think I've done this book justice, in all honesty. I want to go back and read it again, but I think you have to enjoy kind of war stories, if you like, to get the most out of this book. I think if you're coming at this from the sense of it's a classical American novel, it's something that should be read, or you're coming at it because it's a piece of superb literature or whatever, I think you're going to struggle. I think you're not going to enjoy it too much. I think if you enjoy kind of like the war stories, if you like the banter between soldiers, if you like the idea that officers are always trying to get you killed, it's the Blackadder style thing. If you like the Blackadder goes forth, the fourth season of Blackadder, then Catch-22 is more along those kind of lines. I don't think it's as humorous as, say, something like Blackadder is. This is why I don't think it's got the comedy. But again, that could be because a lot of the jokes are fractured across multiple chapters. I don't know. Maybe I've not done this book a great service. Maybe I should go back and read this one again. But that's what I took out of it in the time I got to read it. Essentially, should you read this book? Yeah, I think you should. And I think I should again. I think I've already said that, haven't I? Yes, I have. Deja vu. It's deja vu. So should you read this book? No, bad joke. Yeah, read the book. I'm going to reread it. It was enjoyable enough, but I did struggle because of the fragmented nature of it. I think if I read this not tired, if I read this, not quickly, and actually gave it the time it was due, I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more than I actually did. But yes, that was Catch-22. Next up is going to be Love in the Time of Cholera. That's the next one to review. Until then, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. Good afternoon.